All right, we'll get started. So I'm going to chair the meeting at the start, given that we don't have a presiding member, which is the first agenda item. So I will just commence the meeting and do the acknowledgement of country. The Mid-Murray Council would like to acknowledge and pay respect to the dutiful custodians of the land, the Nadri, the Naywong, the Nangaraku, the Narkat, the Narrandjeri, and the Paramount peoples of the Mid-Murray lands and waters. It's upon their ancestral lands and waters that Mid-Murray Council meets and operates, and Council pays respects to elders past and present, and spiritual beliefs that are continuing importance to those First Nations people of today. Council further acknowledges the contributions and important role that First Nations peoples continue to play within the community, and we extend that respect to any people in attendance here today. So we've got the attendance, Teresa.
Yes.
So everyone, any apologies?
There was Warren and Les.
You, and I'll start with perspective Andy and myself, and you, Teresa. So item 7.1, which is after the attendance you would have seen on the agenda, is the appointment of presiding member. There's a report in there on 7.1, given Councillor Myers' appointment to council. He can no longer be a community member on the committee, and so he was the presiding member, so it's obviously impacted by that as well. And so the committee is now charged with considering that and appointing the presiding member as the first point of order. And there's other recommendations in there that can be considered by the council or by the committee. Just want to stress that anything the committee does is at its discretion. So it's for the committee. The recommendations are in there. From staff perspective, so I open that agenda item for discussion.
So Ben, is there any way that we can postpone choosing a presiding member at this meeting and look at it after the council's either accepted or not accepted the recommendation of point 3 here?
Yeah. So the committee needs to appoint a presiding member. Or they can appoint someone to chair the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I suppose if you look at the terms of reference, it says there needs to be a presiding member. If the presiding member is not available, then the committee would appoint someone to preside over the meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that if we were going to nominate someone, that person has to be present at the meeting now.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, no. You would need to then appoint someone to chair the meeting today, to preside over the meeting, and then you could nominate someone else to be the presiding member. The only issue is if they're not here, they would need to accept that nomination. It's a normal process. So if someone nominates me, for example, usually the first port of call is, do you accept that nomination? And then you go from there. So
That was hence my question.
So there might be an
Regard
issue
to
with next meeting if they become a presiding member and they don't want to be, and then I guess they resign from that, and then that position gets done again, I guess.
but from a governance perspective, and I'll say that I made some changes to the report. The original concept was to appoint someone for 2 meetings for a period of time. From a governance perspective, you need a presiding member, and so that gets appointed. You can't prejudge things that may or may not happen. So technically, you need someone to chair the meetings today.
The terms of reference says, should the presiding member be absent from a meeting, the committee members may appoint a person to act as the presiding member for that meeting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't actually say what to do. It just says the presiding member shall be appointed for a 2-year period.
The key thing is that you have to have a presiding member. And if the presiding member is not there, at the moment, the committee doesn't have a presiding member.
Right.
So
And I think it was up for reappointment this meeting anyway.
26th of April.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
next
So it was,
Friday, so
yeah.
next
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah.
So look, the committee is at the discretion of the committee. So recommendation 2 is that you appoint someone to the end of the term, and if something changes, then you can consider that, or someone could move the motion that number 2 says be appointed for 3 months or for this meeting. So again, you could appoint anybody to be the presiding member.
For the
Or,
for the acting presiding member, just today.
yeah,
So could we
So,
ask Mayor Bailey, would she be prepared to preside over this meeting today? And then,
and then next meeting, nominate someone? Does that,
you need to appoint a presiding member.
okay,
You do need to. It could be for one meeting,
okay,
but you need to.
and it be needed to be worded like that?
So the terms of reference says they shall be appointed for a 2-year period.
Yeah, so it, or the current term, because the
Oh,
current
yes, oh, the
term,
current term comes up now, okay.
yeah, because the current term of the council, committee members are only appointed for the current term of the council.
Mhm.
So there's some tidying up of that there, but it does say presiding member appointed 2 years. Yeah, but from a governance perspective, my advice would be you appoint a presiding member
Mhm.
and without to the end of the term of council, and then you would consider that as change.
From a personal point of view, just losing Kevin as a chair from this heritage meeting and the knowledge he has and the history he has, I think we're doing ourselves an injustice if we don't consider him as a presiding member.
The presiding
that's
member,
point three.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but, he's being put back onto the committee as an elected member, not as presiding member.
But he can still contribute, but he hasn't yet.
Sorry, guys, just to clarify, the committee appoints the presiding member.
Okay,
So if the committee makes recommendation 3
yes,
and council considers that,
Yes.
and then council makes a decision.
yes,
I can't talk for council, so council need to do that. And let's say Kevin was reappointed to the committee, then the committee would make the decision on who the presiding member is.
okay,
Council doesn't make that decision.
Yeah.
So if you appointed someone, that could change.
but the role of the presiding member, according to our terms of reference, is only to oversee and facilitate the conduct of meetings in accordance with the Act and the local government regulations, or now our new code, and to ensure that all community members have an opportunity to participate in discussion in an open and encouraging manner. So there's nothing about experience or anything else, it's literally just
Chairing the meeting, basically.
chairing the meeting.
So what would the committee like to do? So there's a draft recommendations there. Someone can make a different motion.
and here's Andrew. Um,
Whatever
I
one. Not that, yeah.
Or nominate someone.
I would like to move a motion to nominate Andrew Bloomer as presiding member.
Just when I thought I'd.
Just as you walk in the door, Andrew.
But just to fill you in.
Yeah, no, I think I know what you're
So
saying.
Jen, can I confirm that you're moving 1, 2 and 3 and the gap you're putting in to 2
Yes,
is Andrew,
yes.
as the motion reads?
Yeah.
The only concern I have about, as the motion reads, the committee recommends that to appoint councillor Myers to that position. Council's new code of practice has point 10 council appointments. If council needs to appoint a person to positions, the presiding member will first call for nominations for the position if there are more, so I'm not sure that a report can come to council with Kevin's name in there, because we have a code of practice that allows that anyone.
Yeah, but this is a recommendation from the committee.
But the wording is to appoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the committee can make that suggestion,
Mhm.
then the council's at the council's discretion. Yeah, so,
But just be aware that it will come to council and that is what they're going
Yeah.
by, so.
Yeah.
I guess governance wise, do you have anything to say governance wise about changing terms of reference?
Oh, look, it's not ideal to change terms of reference, and I think that this committee already changed the terms of reference when they were keen to include an additional community member previously. But you know, obviously that's up to the committee to make a suggestion.
I think number 3 needs to be removed.
I don't necessarily agree that it should be removed.
Okay, so what we'll do is, if Jen, can you be clear on what motion you're moving?
Number 2,
1 and 2.
1 and 2, yeah.
Okay.
And my thinking behind it is that we have changed the terms of reference before, and we had another elected member that wanted to be on the committee, and we didn't change the terms of reference then. I don't think that we should change it now.
Okay, so there's been a motion put. Do I have a seconder? So Kirsty seconding. Okay, would you like to speak?
Yeah. So I sort of agree with the report we received and appointing Edward as the presiding member. There is concerns on a governance level with, you know, sort of increasing the number of elected members to this, with the aim of specifically putting somebody else in. So regardless of the skills and a whole lot of history and stuff like that, and not, you know, but Kevin has the ability through his designated onshore person, his role on the MOB, Pierce Canali group, and also the volunteer and a really vital community member. He can not influence, but he has the ability to have a really good solid sort of say with sort of happening and express concerns, and he can express his concerns through us as elected members on this committee, and without, because of the potential of a conflict of interest is always going to be something. So with any decisions, if we go that way, there could be conflict of interest, and if it's not handled in the right way, then this committee can be sort of stalled in what it's sort of aiming to do. So that would be my sort of concern. And we've still got skills and knowledge and stuff like that. So that is, and it's actually probably a more, for me, looking at it, a more transparent way of dealing with it. So that's not it.
All right, so I've got a mover and a seconder. Would anyone like to speak on the motion that is being presented, which is 1 and 2?
I was just being a little concerned that Kevin wouldn't be around the table, given that knowledge and that experience. First, I take your point from the governance perspective and how we go about it, how council goes about it. But from this committee's perspective, I think Kevin is an integral part of the group. He's involved in all discussions with his knowledge, and is very active in between meetings as a presiding member as well, if not a committee member.
So if it's about Kevin
Yeah.
or his role, maybe the terms of reference need to be changed to include the person on shore, because my concern is it goes to council and council can put any. We recommend that 3 elected members be, well, there's already one from his ward and one from Shearer ward. Well,
Yeah.
you know, like anything can happen in council meetings, so that's my concern. So if it's
Yeah.
about that role of experience, maybe the terms of reference need to be that person on shore should get a position. Because, you know, is it a concern that person doesn't have a say in here? So that, like, for me, we need to take the person away. We need to think about it's not the person, it's the position. That then is transparent.
Yeah.
And that,
It is, oh, sorry.
that position got created after this committee, is that correct, or? You know,
The position's a legislative requirement.
the person on shore.
Yeah. I don't know the time frame for when Kevin was appointed to that role, but that is a separate role.
He was appointed during the last term of this committee, essentially. To the
Answer requirement.
It is, and we were updating our legislative requirements. and realised the designated person ashore we had was unfortunately no longer with us. So,
I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, and that sort of recognition of that position and formal role was worked out by council after this committee was initially established in the terms of reference.
mm,
So perhaps would have been considered to include that person on committee originally.
Or that were already on there, so we didn't have to
Yeah.
consider it, whereas now they're not.
But as I say, maybe looking at a way to incorporate that role into this committee would be an excellent part to take.
So could I propose for the committee's consideration, and maybe the mover is that number 3 could be varied to talk about the designated the person ashore role. Yes, so it's up to the mover, and I'm mindful that there might be other people want to talk to the current motion at hand, but is that something that,
How do you feel about that, Jen, modifying point 3 for the designated person?
To add in the person ashore.
the
into the
minority
committee, is that right?
Maritime Committee recommends to council that the committee's terms of reference be amended to consider the appointment of the designated person ashore to the committee
Position, yeah.
the position.
As in another, sorry, I'm a bit confused. As in another member of the committee? Is that what you mean?
What I'm
Not
hearing
as,
from the floor.
not as
is that-
presiding.
No, not as a presiding member.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing from the floor is that that role has an important role and would
Yeah,
potentially
agree.
provide value.
Yeah.
Take the person who's appointed to it, so that could be so you're comfortable with that as a mover?
Yeah.
Council
Yeah.
could, that's just a recommendation to
Yeah.
council, so council can then say, do we really want 10 people, maybe we do change it and not have that additional community member, I know we've done the advertising, but maybe they need to look at that before we put somebody into that position, because I do worry that you then have 11 people when I turn up, and that means we're 6 people, and look, today we've just made it, so.
Look, then, from a discussion point of view, does the committee want to consider the number of committee members on there? Originally, the terms of reference did say 6. And it was changed to 7 because I think of the talent of the nominations, the depth of the nominations. So from a governance perspective, the more numbers you have, the more cumbersome it is from a committee perspective, and then quorum increases, so there's other risks associated with that. Again, I'm not directing the committee, I'm just, it's a good conversation to have, noting that we have gone out to done an inspection of interest, but we don't have to appoint anyone.
Yeah.
To do that.
So for number 3, we're taking out 3 elected members and leaving it at 2, and then suggesting that we consider the appointment of the DPA to go into that position.
Yeah, and the question is, do we still want to keep, so the current terms of reference say 7 community people and 2 elected members, or do we want to change it to 6 community people, 2 elected members and the person at source? So then whoever is in that role always gets that position. So Kevin leaves, the next person just gets it, like there's no advertising, just whoever's got that has to be here because of that role and their position on our committee.
Yeah.
And the terms of reference is written so that that can happen. So if there's in the old days of the Rockford person, so when they left, they didn't have to come back to council, it was just that was the position, but
Yeah.
so this would be a desert, so there would be 3 highlights in the terms of reference to say that, but do you want 6 members? Do you want council to consider whether we change 7 to 6, which we can do because there's no one there at the moment, but we have advertised, or do we want an extra person with this extra role, which is sort of where that point 3 was heading.
Can we do all that in this motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, subject to the movers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, my advice is that the more numbers you have, the harder it is to manage committee. The original terms of reference said 6. There is only 6 committee members at the moment, so we don't have to appoint another one. And it makes sense to have that skill set of the designated person assure's role, providing input into this committee. It's obviously at the committee's discretion.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what we're here for, I don't know, if you look at it, I looked at it yesterday, So the objective of our committee is support council to develop and achieve its strategic and commercial objectives in relation to heritage and maritime assets, as well as support the tourism sector, to provide expertise, evidence-based advice to council on the management of its heritage and maritime assets. So I'm thinking if we don't have that designated person sure on this committee, how are we doing that?
Yes.
So it does fit into our terms of reference.
So Jen, I'll go back to you as the mover. What I'm hearing, one, the report be received. Two, Andrew, and I will ask Andrew if he does accept it. I just want to get clear on the motion first. Be appointed the presiding member of council until the end of the current term of council effective the 13th of March. Three, the Mid-Murray Heritage and Maritime Committee recommends to council that the committee's terms of reference be amended to appoint the role of designated person of shore, is that the correct term, Annie?
Yes.
DPA?
Yeah.
To the committee.
And whether
Yeah,
we-
that sounds good, because I'm not comfortable with 3 elected members being on this committee, because I think it's just top heavy, and I think we have to have a lot of community people on that. Yeah, I'm not happy about the 3 elected members, but I'm happy about Kevin in that role being on the committee.
And do you want to consider reducing the community members to 6 to offset that position, or do you want to have this new position as well as that to make 11 people on the committee?
So what would that mean though? That would mean that we would lose a community member though.
Well, we haven't.
Well, we don't have that person now.
The committee.
Yeah.
The
So
term of
if
reference has said, sorry, Jen. You go.
Yeah, so if we can go back down to 6, we're not actually losing anyone as such, because we don't have that anyway, then that's fine. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So then it would be, number 3 would be Mid-Murray Heritage and Maritime Committee recommends to council that the committee's terms of reference be amended to enable the appointment of the designated person of shore role to the committee and reduce the community member number to 6.
Community.
Yeah, that's what it was
Community
originally.
The community representatives.
Community representatives to 6.
Yeah. Which is what originally.
So, movers happy with that, the seconder is happy with that. Would you like to speak?
No, I haven't got to say.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Before I put the motion, I'll just check with Andrew.
Andrew, yeah.
Can I confirm that the current term of council concludes in
November 2026? Yeah.
Yeah, cool. In that case, yes, I accept that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll put the motion. Jen, would you like to speak?
No, I think I've said everything I need to say.
All right, everyone's clear on the motion that you're voting on? I will put that motion. All in favour, can you please raise your hands? That is carried. Thank you. Andrew,
What are they?
committee is now yours to preside over.
You said I'm just on the
I think that was good fight.
Look, the things I think of at last week.
So we're up to item 4 on the agenda, which is the confirmation of minutes.
It's in the front section.
Front section.
Front section, yeah. Haven't got the reports yet.
Oh, so I'm chairing this meeting.
Yes.
Do the rest of it.
Um,
Would like somebody move that the minutes of the last meeting held on 23rd of October are correct. Kirsty, thank you. And the second. Looking at reports.
Declaration.
75, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Would any, is there any, conflict of interest that anybody feels they may have to do with anything on the agenda?
Well, we'll be having a discussion in regard to fuel or the monies, is that right, or is that then?
What,
just-
regarding the reimbursement for
Yeah.
volunteers, does anybody see that there's a conflict of interest?
There's going to be a challenge because some of you, or all of you may be in that
Yes.
there. So from a conflict of interest, if everyone is going to benefit the same, regardless of whether, if you're the only one having a direct benefit as
Yeah.
such, but my read on that would be that that discussion will involve benefit for a number of people, potentially, not you as an individual or the committee as an individual. So I think it would be reasonable to still have that conversation. Maybe just a general declaration that you may receive a benefit depending on the decision, but I don't think it precludes you from the conversation or anyone.
Yeah, and if at any time the conversation turns to where you have a conflict, more of a conflict, I think just there and walk out.
I think maybe my advice through the chair, Patrice, would just be noting that, what item is that?
Yes.
That's the last one.
7.9
So,
is that some of the committee members, subject to the decision, may receive a benefit from that, but it's expected.
Mm.
I think that's pretty cool.
Okay. Yes, sticky one, because I suppose looking around the table now, there'd be myself, in terms of volunteer crew, there'd be
Ladies.
three members. And Warren, if he was present.
and Phil might go to Manham and Dollar might go to Manham,
Yeah.
and, you know, it's general.
Yeah.
But potentially there are 3 boat crew members at the table right now.
So is everybody comfortable with that? I mean, I think we could offer quite a bit to the conversation. Yeah.
And I'd be worried about quorum, to be honest.
So we have to call you back in anyway,
So,
Non-material.
number 6,
Interpretations. Ms. Neil. So moving on to reports.
The Devil's 7 wins.
Okay, existing projects update. So Andy, would you like to take us through?
Yes, essentially this report, when we first formed the committee, had probably 12, 15 projects on there, which were identified as in various stages. There's currently down to 4. 3 of them have imminent outcomes, with only one I'm suggesting is deferred until we get a Northern Master Plan, Township Master Plan one. So obviously the Canali takes up most of the report, given that we still include the history of the Canali. Certainly now that it is back to Morgan, that it is operational, we'll say 90% operational. We've got a few other things to consider. It's in a very good position soon to process and complete its survey. The original project was put on here as a restoration project. Happy to continue that on as a survey project until that time, but once it becomes operational, I don't think it's no longer a project. The exhibition shed, we've got a report today which asks us to include the wharfing for the canal to be considered as part of the Morgan Township Master Plan. That master plan will include Port of Morgan area as well, and I feel that the rail shed should automatically become part and parcel of that from a council officer perspective. The Shiraka is almost complete in West Australia. Doug is running it in for us, so we don't have to do it under steam back here. So, and then it will be returned. And the Morgan and Broadway cases, we have fundraising, a private donor pledge, we've submitted a grant application, and we have some museum budget funds which will potentially complete that job. So there are four jobs on there. It's come a long way. The status of each has been given there for you. So if you have any questions on that.
Just where will the steam car live when it arrives? Is that
It'll live at the Manham Dock.
within the steam shed?
Haven't decided where that's going to go yet. We need to assess that project when we receive it back, by what condition it's in, what amount of, is it a full display, is a part display, and then where are we going to store it? So the exhibition shed seems to me to be a logical place, but until we actually see what we could get a crate full of bits. Which might mean it lives in the volunteers' workshop for a while until we put it together and then decide where we're going to display it.
Any other questions relating to the report?
Yep. Yeah. Through the
Through the
so I just noticed, the budget was sort of question mark in the budget for the canal.
Yeah.
Have we, what's sort of happening in there, because I don't think there's any budget line for it.
There's budget lines.
There's a budget line.
We go. We have budget lines. They are at the stage where they're fully committed.
Right.
So that's a discussion this afternoon will involve Carol. Ben and I have had several discussions about the only way we can fund the rest of this is to reallocate existing funds. We prefer not clearly to go back to council and ask for more money, or we may have to delay everything to get grants. However, up till now, the adjustments have always come from other budget lines within the tourism sector. So we're very keen to keep the total tourism budget under the budget allocated by council, minimise the spending as much as.
So through the chair, I've asked Andy, and I think part of the agenda for this afternoon is a list of all the jobs that remain outstanding for the Canally, and some costs and also priorities, because we need to know that, and then that will make a decision on what we have from the existing budget, or whether we need to go back to council to pass that. And that is not a preference, really. And so we just need clarity on what needs to be done to finish and operationalise the project, and that's part of the conversation. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's absolutely correct. The other side of it, of which we don't have an cruise operational income budget line either. So if we were to get the boat on the water in this financial year and we conducted a number of cruises with it, we'd have additional income that we don't currently budget for.
So when you talk of the existing tourism budget, that's that.
There's the total.
That's, oh no, sorry, but is that,
in totality.
so we need to find the money within this, this report, or are there other pots of money
I need to find the money within that.
within your wider tourism budget as opposed to the
My wider tourism budget isn't much wider than that.
Yeah.
If at all.
So,
One fine this one.
so I have delegations who move budget around within budget set by council.
Yeah, okay.
And so if Andy wants further budget or wants to move something from budget line here to budget line here, then we have a conversation, make a discussion, and make a decision on that.
Okay, so there's an operational mechanism as opposed to something that goes back to the council chamber.
Yeah, so if there needs to be an increase, then outside of my delegation or the existing budget, then that needs to go to council.
Yeah.
But I've got to make a judgment call on what gives in other budget lines, if that's prudent. Or also why that budget line hasn't been spent and wasn't needed in the first place, which Andy and I had conversations about. all the time. Sorry, not just Andy, other staff. You budgeted for this, you haven't spent it now, there's generally reasons for that.
Yeah.
Because the project hasn't progressed or something else, and, I just don't wanna make sure we're not sacrificing other things.
Yeah.
That need to be done, whether that's, for example, a new display in a museum or a promotional piece to get other people.
Any other?
So I can just part to that, just in regard to Shiraka, replica, and it just says, once returned to manor, a full assessment of the project will be considered and costed. I think you might have sort of addressed that in that we don't know whether we're getting the car or sort of stuff like that. So, yeah. So that's a probably answered that.
Through the chair, the same conversation, we want to get the finale back to Morgan and find out exactly what else needs to be done to it, and that's been achieved, so some amazing work by the volunteers and really trying conditions over the last few weeks. So that's ticked, went down and saw it there today. Same with the car, so Annie and I had a conversation and we just need to get it back. And then work out where to from here. We've talked about this being the gift that keeps giving, Andy, and we'll get it back and then we'll make some judgment calls on that. Sorry, through the chair, and just one comment, Andy, I think maybe tidying up that table, because obviously it's got a lot of history in it, and so potentially you can
I can delete a lot.
of stuff and just go, here's the current projects, here's the status. And that way everyone knows where.
Yeah.
So a lot of, in the history comment or columns, there's a lot of.
That's fine.
Any other questions? In that case. Sure. In that case, would somebody like to move, and second, that Andy's report be received, Di? Sean. Okay.
I take it that's carried.
Yeah.
Sorry. 7.2, 7.3, oh, okay, sorry, yeah. Thank you for protocol. All in favour with for the report being received?
And everyone's
Carried. 7.3, from Portamore, where are we? Museum collections, membership acceptance letter for Morgan Manson Museum. Trace, do you want to take us through that?
So, okay, the Port of Morgan report. So you've obviously all read that. So I'll just kind of pick a few points out of there. So the museum, yes, we were going for a grant to the History Trust of South Australia to apply for 20,000 to finally get the showcase up and running for the mural. In doing that, we realised that we had to be a member of the Museum and Collections Program, which we weren't. Manum Dock already are, but the Lancia Museum weren't. So we had to apply for membership and fill out all their forms and do an organisation review and self-review. So after doing all that and submitting it, we were approved. And then because we'd already had the application up and ready on the Smarty Grants program, we just submitted it straight away. So now we're waiting to see how we went with that. So that's good, but for future grants, we can now, go straight to the History Trust and go for grants for our museum here, which is good.
And I'll be very disappointed if they don't approve that one.
Yeah, because it looks pretty strong.
Right in their
Yeah, their criteria was, we were bang on with that.
And the actual museum has to be the member, does it? Not
Mid-Murray Council. So we did that at first and got knocked back. Yeah, it had to be under the museum's name. So yeah, but that's all gone through now, and that was very good. They were very helpful. Statistics with the museum, well, statistics with Craft Shop and Museum, they fluctuate up and down all the time. And as we've already previously gone through, different things like boat cruise, tours, all the rest of it, they, make the difference. Also keeping the doors open make a difference. I have highlighted in there the need for volunteers in the museum and craft shops at present is high. We've had a few closure days in February, and there's been a decrease in volunteer availability. That might be due to volunteers being sick, taking a couple months off, leaving due to retirement. but we're just not able to fill those positions really easily. And with staff workload increasing, we haven't been able to man the shop either. So we've decided, going into the craft shop section now, that Mondays we will close, just leaving it as a 6-day a week. And then just try and man it with volunteers as best we can, because the staff are actually quite inundated with the extra canally stuff at the moment. So, but in saying that, the statistics, if you look at the craft shop, are still quite high. They're still looking pretty good. I've put on there as well, the Elf Magic event at the Morgan pageant was another huge success. For Morgan and the shop. Yeah, and yes, it was. Yeah, and we congratulated them on their Australia Day award. So with any event on our riverfront, obviously then our asset like the craft shop is going to benefit, because people, the foot traffic past that area is, that's why the statistics are so high. And, you know, they just walking past there to visit the canally, or they, yeah, there you go. And Andrew pops up and always says, can I go in the shop? So, yeah, no. So everything's looking pretty good with those. Lightspeed, Tori and Rhiannon have been working on basically doing stock take, double check, because some volunteers aren't comfortable with the POS system and some are, and training new ones. Sometimes we start them off manually. So we just like to sometimes do a stock take randomly, just to make sure that it's everything on the POS system is correct by the time it's end of financial year. Otherwise it makes it a little bit difficult. So yeah, basically haven't done any major purchases, but we are going to do a few extra purchases before the Morgan Living River and before Easter, because with the canally now home, we're looking at getting some new souvenirs in and really promoting that over that event. So, but otherwise everything's, you know, pretty same as really. That's it for me.
Any questions?
I'll just make a.
It's only your meeting.
Yeah, I know. I've got to highlight it here. The detail in that was really good with the statistics and everything like that, but it was sort of glaring that we are hoping to seeing the statistics for Manham Museum, so it would be really great to have the same, because that's a snapshot.
Yeah.
And it's a really positive sort of one, so it would be good.
Simone and I discussed that via email, and it's clearly just been an oversight since the staff at Manor moved along. We
I
haven't
just
sort of
wasn't sure
noticed,
whether
but
it
yeah.
was before.
No, it's
I came
going
on
to
the
be
committee,
reintroduced
Okay,
as of next
excellent.
meeting.
Yep, thanks.
And what, can I just ask what the POS system, what brand it is, or?
Lightspeed. Yeah.
And there's not a POS system within the Manham BRC.
Lightspeed. We've
You
got
got
some,
Lightspeed as well.
yeah. Used to be called Ben for those in mind.
Yeah. So does that give the operability to actually share stock? If, like, can we get conserves from Morgan shop, you know, and the local craft stuff from Morgan shop to the Manham shop?
My understanding is not automatically, but you can physically transfer stock and have your stock items on the other POS.
Yeah.
But it works a little bit different with the Morgan shop, is on a commission basis,
Yeah.
but the Manor shop is
That's
by
right,
itself.
yeah. So that's the.
Yeah, so when we do our suppliers, it's a little bit time consuming at the end of the month, but I mean, with 20% commission we're getting for the stock to be in the shop, and we've actually got quite a few suppliers. So yeah, but that's the difference between Manham and Morgan, is ours are, yeah, we have a little bit of extra to do at the end of the month, but it's proving to be worthwhile. So, and it's local produce. Visitors love local produce.
I think it's great.
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Like,
it is.
you know, we should be
Yeah.
having those concerts on the boats, and you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
all that and doing that. But
I mean, there is a way of doing
yeah,
that.
but it's
Yeah,
incredibly labour intensive to.
Well, no, the easiest way is probably for us, if we're going to be used on the boats, we would buy them
Yeah,
out of the
yeah.
boat budget, and that would reflect in the craft shop sales.
Yeah.
But any standard souvenir that we produce ourselves as a tourism team, there's no reason why they can't be sold in both venues.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have the same impact on suppliers and commissions and things like that.
And
So,
Manor, you've got to be careful, because there is already a hospital auxiliary shop, so we're not meant to compete with.
Yeah.
targets.
We try not to.
and So, yeah, with merchandise, type tourism merchandise, that's bought in. So the Morgan shop would be paying for that.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And most of our suppliers are shared, so Manor and Morgan order from the same wholesalers and things like that, so.
Thank you. Any other questions raised on that? Thank you. See, thanks. This is actually great. Even my photograph.
Oh, good, I'm glad.
Would somebody like to move Bill and second Simone and Carol, all in favour? That's what I'm supposed to say. Thank you. Okay. Next one. Where are we? Report on the Canali Operation 2 Canali Operation Group meetings. Do you want to take us through this one, Andy?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tag team.
Yeah.
It's very simple. We forwarded you the meetings of the Canali Operations Group for information and considerations. If there are any recommendations resulting from those committee meetings to this one, it will appear as a separate report. So just in summary of some of the discussion points there, Canali Operations Group are quite well organised in their wood cutting and processing days at the yard that they hold fortnightly. We're short of a team leader, and we're also looking for truck drivers as far as wood moving is concerned. Teresa's looking at, Teresa by the committee looking at polo shirts for crew members, which crew members here are purchasing their own shirts to wear on the vessel. Is something that is different to Manum, but it's the way this group want to do that. Canali souvenirs per craft shop, as Teresa indicated, particularly for the event coming up. Return Canali from Manum Morgan has all gone well. Vessel management documentation has been tested during the transit stages. I might inspect that folder today to make sure they've actually been using the right forms and see how that's going. So that group will then adopt the vessel management plan if there aren't any changes to the documentation. There's been a lot of social media support for Canali. The slipping in Berry went really well. We put a lot of controls in place to meet SA Water's requirements, and they were extremely happy with us. And at this point in time, I've been advised that we are certainly invited to go back there again, which is an improvement on the last conversation I had with them before that. Simon's identified a whole heap of engineering jobs from his time on the boat that need attention, as Ben referred to. We're discussing that this afternoon. They'll be prioritised and costed. We've already done a bit of training on the vessel. We have an exemption to operate for training purposes on the river now up until it was a 3-month period, which is the longest we can do so. So that's around the end of May, I think. So we're hoping to progress survey on that. And there's another shipboard safety course happening in Melbourne on the 18th of March.
Any questions on this? So there'll be a bit covered off this afternoon regarding Canali's completion. Are there any questions for Andy at this stage? Yes, I have a mover and a second.
Andrew, just got a
Yeah.
question. Just got a question about the report. Why can't the POC kids work on the Canali? Is it because she's not on the survey? There's no reason why written down?
Prince
Well, they
Alfred.
can't volunteer on it? Yeah.
Yeah, they can't work on the Canali because we don't have insurance for other people to be on the vessel at this point. We're surveyed, so we're not open for public to necessarily be on there. And Phil and his team are working on finishing it off, the finishing touches. But once we survey, that will change.
That was my next question. It just wasn't in the report. It just said that they can't, but it didn't say why they can't. So if there is a possibility down the track, that would be wonderful, because they come back every year. So
Yeah,
that
that's
would be
correct.
a great thing that they could do.
Yeah. I did pass on their information to other people within council, Councillor Davis, and also invited them to attend the museum and have a talk on the canally. You know, we having them work on it is a slightly different thing.
Yeah, but it's good that it can possibly happen down the track.
Can possibly happen down the track. That's good. Yeah.
Excellent. Any other questions then? Di, I'll move it. Second, Kirsty, thank you. All those in favour? Carried. On to Maritime Operation Group update, Andy.
No,
7.5.
Oh, sorry, this one.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right.
Back to see on this one.
Sorry.
It's very cool.
Yeah, I'm thinking
I make up time because I'm running late all the time.
Carol has pre-prepared me.
Okay, 7.5.
Maybe we didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Who would like to talk to this one?
I'm happy to. Look, it's the second time we've gone for National Heritage List, and the second time it's come back. This time it's been fairly directly pointed out that in the opinion of the judging body, the Echuca Wharf tells the story of river trade adequately for everybody.
Because we have two wharves.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm just giving you
Yes.
what they've told. So if we pursue the line, basically I'm reading between the lines, if we pursue the line of river trade, we're never going to be nationally heritage listed. Its sole purpose for me was river trade and the union between the river and the rail coming second. It's going to be a very difficult piece to argue. It will be reassessed again as part of the next year's thing, and we've got the opportunity of changing some of the detail. So basically the call is out there. Who has got the stories or the reasons for us to significantly change our application to deflect away from river trade for the Morgan Wharf? And that's really what it's going to come down to.
I'm wondering if we need to do a media piece on this, because somebody put up some photos the other day and, I came up and I put the link to this agenda. It's not, everyone thinks it's council.
Yeah.
Let's do a bit of a media piece and let people come to us, because then we're not just asking this committee, but other people, families, and then we can actually use some of that feedback and say, here's a, petition or whatever it takes. And it puts a bit of pressure back on them to say, hey, we're blaming on you.
But it's also, they've noted in there, and they made it clear they wouldn't put it in if it didn't want important to them. It's state heritage listed. They noted that. So I think they probably looked at the photos we had to supply them, which are in poor condition. You can't hide that. They know it's state heritage listed, I think, at the national level that walked away from doing anything with it, and putting it back on the owners of the wharf and state heritage to sort it out.
So there are a number of photos in existence of the actual wharf in use with the trains and the boats and good condition, and the wharf was actually 3 sections and it was built to accommodate the trade, etc. So there are a number of
and all of that information has been provided. We couldn't have provided the case any clearer, I don't think. That there was more to it than just the river trade, but it was trade. That's what it was all about. It's unfortunate. I think the media piece might gather some.
Disappointment and
some
of those words, and the community and the wider community. It wouldn't cost much.
Bringing your
We're not accepting no idea.
it's probably.
It's disappointing.
Very
Yeah.
good.
For me, it was almost like the decision was based around the story, not the physical side, because I know the physical side is in ruin.
Yeah.
The story is all they were interested in for National Heritage.
And we need it for certain grants. I noticed yesterday Karen Grogan put up a post that they've just given a heap of federal money to Ports Fury on one of those out that way, for one of their moves. You know, we're missing out on that. Well, it's not national.
Yeah, well, we were a port, weren't we? Port of more.
Have we got our local members on board? Like, are they well aware of what's going on?
Yeah, well, did we get a support letter from them? Because that always helps.
I think we got support
Yeah, I think
letters
Tony has,
from, we put in 15, 20 support
Yeah.
letters from every person we could think of, an organisation that could use it.
Maybe we could actually forward the application that we sent through out to everyone and you can have a read if you want and see what was actually submitted. And you might be able to come back with some feedback on, you know, is there another way we could, because then you'll see we did have quite a lot of really, really good support letters from the Shack Owners Associations through to like other riverboat organisations in other states. Yeah,
So I think just a wider call.
Yeah.
To anybody,
Yeah.
you know, there's someone that we missed, they just might do that, it's one of them, but I don't know. If that's something we care about, I think we just go to it.
Playing away, yeah.
No, mate.
You got a few phone numbers in your phone, I'm sure.
Yeah. We'll walk him on the walk.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that one? Jen, in that case, Simone, second, please, Di and Carrie. Thank you. Now, 7.6. I've got green now. Manning Operations Group update.
Again, attached the recent minutes for the Maritime Operations Group, which are a lot more extensive at this point in time than the Morgan ones. That's for information. The same applies. Recommendations from that group will come here as a separate report, and we have one of those here today, and we've had several in the past. So beside the report that's coming here today, that's the main order of business for me. Any questions?
That's pointing there about the tender being upgraded to workboat. Confirming the right tweet, I imagine when it's going to get back to us on. Then the operators need to be like coxswain or something like that.
We already do.
Alright. Then it's like a higher the next.
No, it won't. We're already meeting that qualification. The difficulty with the boat being an old boat doesn't have any inbuilt fluency. So that's how we would have to do that for it to be considered for a workboat. The Port of Morgan tender boat is already registered as a workboat, which means it can be used for other things. As long as if it's business, it has a coxswain, Cox 3 at the helm.
It's in my course of the talk about tender boat workplace, either across it, you know, wasn't sure whether it was the tender boat wasn't suitable, so the workboat was a separate boat. It's just upgrading it.
Yeah, but it's an upgrade. Tender boat and man has a budget line attached to it, it's only a small budget, yet to fully assess what would be required. And the Mogs group was probably help us determine whether or not we need to go through that process. I think it's a good idea. Then it's a little bit less prescribed. At the moment, it must be within eyesight of the Marion because it's part of the Marion survey.
Okay, so we've got passenger or material runs out eyesight. It's breaching its.
Yeah, that's the technical side of it, to my knowledge.
Any other questions? I had a couple, I just had one comment, I can't actually find it, it was in the MOG's focus, and it had future planning strategy cruising, which is one of the, could you actually, I'm just trying to find what page it's on where there was.
Yes, the last page of the agenda of the minutes. Sorry.
Can you give me?
Not the project list, it's the last page of the actual notes. So page 2 of the report.
Which page of the agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry, mate. One down the bottom.
Yeah, sorry, 31.
So you go.
Yeah, I just had some, because I thought it was really good, great to have that definition of the MOX focus. I just wanted to know, with no particular agenda, is where you talk about future planning strategy and cruising, that the MOX doesn't really have representation from the sort of like front of house of the boat. So there's a bit of a disconnect there in terms of what with the passenger experience as opposed to the boat experience.
When we went through, the reason, I'll be brutally honest, the reason I put focus on MOGs on the agenda for each time consideration, we've agreed on a set of purposes for MOGs because I felt that the group was drifting away a little bit too much. I want to refocus them. And what are their purposes and what are their priorities for 25? One of the things we discussed at the original meeting, are the right people sitting in this room? Do we need representation from another group of people? And the engineer was raised, but no one raised anything about crew members on the boat or hospitality or persons or other groups. It is the group can and does have the capacity to take on a new representation from different areas of the vessel, as long as they're bringing, I guess, their knowledge, skills, and an aspect to the group, the MOGS group, that will benefit the group and benefit us in turn because those recommendations flow through. So yeah, in answer to your question, if you wanted to come and sit on MOGS for those meetings, you're welcome to do so. It isn't a formal appointment process. It is the right people in the room, so we have a good conversation about what's best for Marion and the Mayflower.
No, I mean, no, I just without being critical, I've noticed that because front of house stuff usually goes back through Katrina. Katrina's usually present at those meetings, but and often with the wider group, there are decisions that are made which impact going back to the front of house volunteers, which is really just persons bar staff. One of the problems is that quite a bit of the hospitality crew are out of, we've got Derek at Finnis, Denise and Elaine were sort of spread out, but I really think the MOGs, beyond having an effective and attractive and operational boat, should be focused on what the product is, what we're actually providing to the passengers, which that's just a comment. And then just I had down where you talk in I think priorities F, recreate the atmosphere. I was just wondering what the atmosphere was.
The atmosphere is in relation to the MOGS group having a little gathering after their working bee meetings and sitting down to discuss the tasks at hand. We're finding that some of them just drift off. There isn't necessarily a conversation piece, but they're also talking about more social events as well, just with camaraderie between everybody.
Any other questions for Andy? Do I have a mover? Kirsty, thank you. Second, Di, oh, Phil, first Phil this one. And carried. Thank you. 7.7 boat attendance at festivals. Andy?
Look, from previous discussions of this level, it's clear that our attendance at boating festivals is a very worthwhile thing to do. Show support for the riverboat community, for other towns, other vessels, camaraderie. Noticed with the canal, gets huge amounts of publicity when one of these boats go up and down the river. So taking that on board, we've built into the cruise schedules for Marion and Mayflower this year, both attend SA Wooden Boat Festival and also both attend the Morgan River River Festival. Because clearly the second one, there's a lot of Mayflower history here in Morgan. Really important that she comes up here. Mayflower and Marion are quite, I'm told, are quite popular when they go down to the Wooden Boat Festival, and we've got an opportunity of making cruise fares down there. Certainly we've got income from overnight cruises on the way down to Gore, and I believe on the way back from Gore, with solid bookings already. And we'll have the day cruising opportunities for both boats down there for the weekend.
We're going to get across the lake.
We have our permits, all the permits are in place, it's really good.
No.
The sad part is we have to pay the fee,
My only question was, I know when we the junction there was a couple. I know there was a couple who've done all of the document and all that sort of, and the boat. They offered some funding to get the Mayflower up to the Junction Valley, and we didn't necessarily, we couldn't get her up there. Is that funding still available for getting it down to the Wooden Boat Festival?
Well, I won't get down lock through or closed.
No, I think
The boat's upstream.
I think what Kirsty's talking about is where Robert and Pam,
Yeah,
Robert offered assistance to get the Wentworth to and whether I don't know, Andy's question to Andy initially, do you think it would be required? Because
certainly not to the extent of going to Wentworth. This is it's a 3-day trip, basically. We're trying to package it up with a Marion that we're cruising down together for safety. Passengers aboard the Marion can also ride on the Mayflower as part of that package deal. Whilst in the river system, she'll have no passengers going across the lake. But yeah, its earning capacity more is during the weekend.
Yeah,
I don't know that taking her off the river for will probably be 4 cruising days makes a huge impact as to what Wentworth Rally was going to do, taking 3 or 4 weeks out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure, there'll be some cost.
I don't think it would be appropriate.
I think it would be
Let's say offer was to get the boat to Wentworth because it was such an out there trip.
It was 4 weeks in total. It was a lot of loss of revenue.
Jen, yeah. Jen.
I was just going to say that, I mean, I don't know, but that was a very specific thing that they were wanting to sponsor. So I don't think it's sort of a thing that they'll just do for other things. That's very specific things. So I can't see it happening. And Andy's right; it's going to get revenue with passengers and stuff like that. It's not like a huge trip that Wentworth would have been. And we've never done that in the past. We've always paid for. She makes her own way there, and that's it.
Yeah, I think I think there's some really good media opportunities with this as well. Historically, I don't know if they've ever been across, because we're taking 2 heritage boats in tandem. down. So I think there's we could buzz some local, media up on that. And I made contact with the boat, festival in terms of, running some media through them. It's been a bit of a slow process. Also, Luke Carpenter's purchase Mayflower.
That's his third boat, probably.
Yeah, so I don't think Luke's Daisy.
Daisy.
Yeah.
I had a chat with him initially, just, I don't think he's thinking on taking it down. I think he's thinking of taking it down earlier.
Right.
He was talking about over Easter, but if possibly we could get the three of them travelling together. So we've got two steamers and another heritage boat. That's newsworthy, I think, in terms of,
He is planning to, Andrew, that is correct. Mark's actually,
in fact,
Mark's crewing on there at the moment, so I can tell you that is the plan.
yes, sir. Any other questions for Andy on festivals? No. Would somebody like to move that we accept the report? Second, Jen, thank you. Carried. Yes, thank you. Financials. And it is 7.8.
This is a report from John Howe, accountant for Mid-Murray Council. I give John the complete license to write his own report in his way. It points out that, and obviously budgets the operating deficit of 499,000 against the year-to-date budget deficit of 647 can be taken as a good thing, and I think it is a good thing that we're trying to be ahead of our budgets. It's also can be taken as a negative thing. It's still $500,000 in council funding, but we've made those points before. There's a cost in operating the boats and having tourism staff and everything else. And when we consider our budget from John, we need to consider that people are employed across a range of functions for the tourism side of things. It's not just about a boat. It's not just about 2 boats or 3 boats. It's about the entire facilities that we all operate and all of the business that we do as well. So obviously staff wages is a major cost. I always work on the goal, if we can cover the costs of operating our business, we'll work on staff covering the cost of staff wages after that. We're looking as though we're getting closer to that, which is far more positive a place than what we were a few years ago. However, Mayor Bailey, your former accountant, you always love this report, and I always love to hand them to you a little bit because you know how John will put things and you know how you want to read
things
things.
I've got highlighted. Port of Morgan, the IT expenses is 7,000, but the income's only 100, so he's up in the right place there, or is it the same he's been doing in the VIC that costs him? But not bringing in income.
The budget just hasn't been reallocated. So what we had originally in there was that the craft shop was paying for all of the merchandise which was being sold through the museum, the VIC, and the craft shop itself. But the income was being distributed across the other 3 functions. So part of that process was to then identify that all of the income from those now needs to go to the craft shop, not across the other functions. So I think that's just
but it's the other way now. So the expenses have gone to the VIC instead of the craft shop, or there's some other expense. I don't know, you buy through the guides or whatever. But it might be worth just looking at that 7,000 to make sure it shouldn't go to the craft shop.
I'll check the expenses because it could be your utilities and everything and insurance. Because we don't make any money virtually apart from just some printing.
No,
That's it.
that was the only point there. The Manor Markets, it says September market cancelled. I think there are a few more, so just a few more notes. And obviously, a concern that, PS Canary capital expenditure doesn't have a budget and we've spent 27,000. That's all I have. An additional point was I noticed in the Wakery news last week, there was an opinion piece or a letter to the editor from, I know that they're a resident of Morgan, and it was, basically saying that council, didn't say McMurray, it didn't say council, spend 10% of your rate on tourism, which is incorrect, like our rate notice comes out, it's only 7%.
Thank you.
But
We get a budget increase.
But it is something, obviously, if someone in the community is getting rolled up, so it's good for us to be able to send some positives out on what we do and why that money is important to spend in our region, so. Just a bit of thought.
Well, the positives it'd be good for some positives from the businesses that benefit. And the tourism benefit, the tourism.
Anyone could have a word to any of them, maybe to write in as a response to that and say, hey, we're number one.
I haven't even read it.
No, me neither, but I've got it at home, so I better read it, yeah.
Maybe my rate's noticed that it was only 7%, and this is how it benefits the businesses that I know, maybe even NCETA could write in, if they know the benefits.
That leads them to
I just thought it was interesting, well, number one, that the facts were incorrect.
Was that in the Wakefield District News?
Yeah, it was just in a letter to the editor, I think it was, and I did actually, just send a text message to the editor to say, well, not sure what council it spoke to, but the facts may not be correct if it is about council. But I don't think it's worth council writing.
Especially when we
Put it out
specifically know.
Yeah.
Lots of my group.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Maybe they're contributing and they haven't told
well,
us.
maybe. Tourism is an economic driver for the whole region.
As a caravan.
We just need.
Yeah.
I agree.
I guess this committee should be selling that to the public, because we don't want any of that negative distracting from what we're doing.
I had a couple of budget questions, and the,
Got to wish John attended these meetings.
yeah, we're getting in, I think. A couple of
Maybe if there's any budget questions,
I don't
anyone can
understand.
email you to the
Yeah.
email.
It would be
John.
handy.
In advance, and that's what we encourage the members to do,
Yeah.
because it's better to have the answers. And sometimes they're dealt with outside the committee or council meeting, so it's just an email and say, hey, I've got these questions. John provides a response, and you don't even need to raise them.
That's shoot.
Oh, no, it's, I've just noticed that the current budget of, Marion Mayflower and the VIC has increased, so we have original budget, income budget I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah.
So we've gone up.
Yeah.
18,000 on, pardon me, on Marion, 5,000 on Mayflower and 11,000 on the VIC. So how does that work? Because I imagine that's just a process thing.
It's all on performance. So we do a budget review every quarter.
Legislatively, we have to.
Yeah, and we also review or have a look at our budget performance every month.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work that goes into that, where the budget reviews come through. If we feel we're going to possibly exceed an income or an expenditure budget in that, we try and then work out what we need to say. Increase in income budget is the best news. But it might have been for one component of Marion's thing. So the other areas might still be short of expectation as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, so what I suppose I'm getting at is the bar, we have a budget and then we set the bar a bit higher halfway through the budget. You go,
yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's
And we look
basically.
the other way, so when
Yeah,
the flood came, we actually decreased our budgets.
Yeah.
We're not on
Yeah.
that.
And I think too, we're still trying to catch up from those decreases through the flood period. As we're building our business back up again,
Yeah.
the performance will guide the budget expectation from quarter to quarter.
Yeah. So following on from that, I think I brought it up before. If we go to line 0515, which is the Rockford wine sponsorship.
Yes, we have. Because that's still not listed under
Marion.
Okay.
If we put that in against the Marion's income, which is 18,000 year to date actual, with a budget of 37, that pushes the vote income up substantially.
Also, we've got to put the budget in there as well. So the budgeted income
Yes.
needs to go with the actual income, so there will be a net zero growth for the Marion.
I'm not with you. So,
Alright,
so
so-
if we shift,
So we can't just shift the income
yeah,
and keep a budget with no income recorded against it somewhere else. We would have to send the budget plus the income to date under the different category. I think that's what you're after. But yes, there's the Rockford income has to be added to the general cruise income for
Yeah,
Marion. Yeah,
that's what I'm getting at.
but it doesn't reduce the budget for the main set of income numbers.
Because
We
you know.
had a
what
budget
Yeah.
already, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just sort of, when I look at this, I
It
go.
changes where the income recorded.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
being recorded because that's, because it's not actually, sponsorship income. It's,
Yeah.
that's a charter income.
That's a good point.
Uh, And then there was a revision on that income line from 55, an income of 55 to a current budget of 37. I'm assuming that's because they're having less, they're doing less charters this year. Sorry, I'm on
Yes.
line 0515.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they got three, well, they've had some charters already and their last one for the financial year will happen in June.
Yeah.
And then they'll do another couple after in the next financial year. That's why that's changed.
And then relative to capital renewal, so that's the line 0630. So it had a budget of 120. This is for Marion.
Yeah.
Which spilled out with the boiler work to 178.
Yeah.
Where, so that there is there's some money held in effectively trust, I believe, from Rockford sponsorship.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
that's not shown. I suppose what I'm saying is
Yeah.
this is more a profit and loss, so you can't actually, but that's not money, that's money that was already held in trust by the council for the boat. So that actually affects our profit line.
So it'll be journaled across the profit
Yeah.
line if it hasn't already
If it
been
gets
done.
taken out of that account and
Correct.
the income that would come in that spot.
Okay.
So it'll come in as income.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or
so-
or offset expense, yeah, or
Yeah.
offset expense.
So at some point that'll come. It's just every time I see the current budget number, it gets scarier, the current budget scarier, but then I'm also assuming that the natural disaster line, if that doesn't come through, that all disappears out of this. So there's another 300,000 deficit there. So we talk, because that's come into the financial reports. So we've got line 0590 national. Because if we go back,
Yeah,
A
so that,
few
that's
budgets,
basically the Morgan Wharf, I think.
Yeah.
And, yeah, basically, if we don't get it through, we take out the expense because we don't do it.
Yeah. So because there's a $336,000 deficit there, which wasn't in originally, which is what's buying us out to 1.3.
Yeah, so that's because part of the grant that we went through, we had to put in a contribution, but if that grant doesn't, which it hasn't, it will, to this stage, we'll take both out, so the deficit won't. be really, 'cause we
Yeah,
won't
so
do
that,
it.
so that brings us up to,
Yeah, so I wouldn't stress too much. about it.
any other questions, budget related? Jen? Would I have somebody to move and to second the budget report? Simone, thank you. Second, Phil, Harry. Thank you, folks. Okay, 7.10, Canelli Mooring.
7.9.
Oh, sorry. God, don't. I'll give you a better at this. Yeah, oh.
You're just very,
Yeah, no,
very keen
Oh,
to
no,
extrovert these meetings.
7.9, reimbursement of travel expenses for volunteer crew members.
Okay, so this was a recommendation, there was a recommendation from the Maritime Operations Group, or MOG. And their recommendation was essentially something similar to what Oscar W do and the industry might do. And Phil, you work on both of those, so you can verify if I've got anything wrong there. They provide $50 for any crew member that travels greater than 50 kilometres from their home to work on the boat. Now that's, you know, that's all well and good. Clearly, we don't have budget for that. We need to consider how we go about all of that. We also need to do a lot more work on what the impact would be for us. But also the benefits of doing it, particularly now we're bringing the third boat onto Morgan, is that there'll be a lot more volunteers keen to assist when we need, if we're providing a volunteer reimbursement. I'm going to call this a volunteer reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses to some degree. May not cover all of their costs, but there's an argument that volunteers volunteer on our boats to get the joint satisfaction out of the boats, but at the same time, there's costing them money to do that. So this recommendation from MOG was to provide a level of reimbursement for the volunteers who work, particularly on the Manum 2 boats. I think universally we have 3, so whatever we decide for Manum will also apply for Morgan. So discussing it with our designated person ashore, Mr. Kevin Myers, Kevin felt after attending the meeting that a scaled approach would be better, so that the person is living further away, we're getting a little bit more than the person is living close by. We also had a look at how much fuel people would probably use, you know, travelling 50 or 100 or 300 kilometres. Some come from Victoria to work on our boats. We can't reimburse all of that, clearly, for they choose to do so. So Kevin and I then felt that maybe a scaled approach would be more in keeping with actually reimbursing reasonable out-of-pocket expenses without giving someone that lives 50 kilometres away at a surplus of $25, $30 just as a blanket. Makes it a little more complicated to administer. But once we get the person's distance from home to whichever vessel we're working on, it's not going to be that difficult, to be perfectly honest. So there's a few recommendations here for you to consider. Obviously, one is straight, but the report gets received. Heritage Maritime Committee recommend council there be no reimbursement. Now this is to offset the recommendation there is a reimbursement, but I have both. Or the Mid-Murray Heritage Maritime Committee recommend the council all volunteers who travel greater than 50 kilometres to crew on the vessel with paying guests, and that's key. It's only when we're cruising with paying guests, they get $50. That's the original MOG proposal. Well, the scaled version is that if persons travel 50 to 99 away from the relevant port, receive 20, which is around about what they would cost them, between 100 and 199, $30, and 200 and 299, 40, and over 300 receive 50. That's the 3 or options. You can't have them all. But this committee's asked to choose one of those which applies. And item number 5, recommendation that recommend council changes endorsed by council don't take effect until the 25-26 financial year and are indexed to CPI, enabling us to get amounts into our adopted council.
Discussion.
The other boats that are doing this already, do we know, like, is this proposal very similar to what they're doing in terms of the financial amount, and do you know how it's received within the voluntary crew?
Phil?
It's Phil, you might be an excellent position, having to travel quite a long way.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about, it's mainly captains, engineers, and mates with it. Like down in Gore, most of their deck crew, they're all locals.
Mhm.
So you're not getting your deck crew travelling very far. Now, originally, what I was offered was whatever the council were paying per mileage for council employees using their vehicle,
Pretty tax rate, you know,
whatever.
ATO rate, which is
Yeah.
85.
Yeah. And for me to go down from here to Gore and back, I think it was somewhere about $150, $180.
Mm.
And I said, well, I don't use that much fuel, and we came to an agreement. Because I recognise the furthest to travel down there. As far as the industry goes, I think it's 20 or 30 bucks, so they,
That's a flat rate.
as a flat rate, yeah, not an extra.
Mhm.
And again, then just with people that come distances, like captains and Tucker and people like that. Frank travels no further than I travel, really. He just comes from Mildura. But, yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing in Gouldar at the moment. I haven't done much boat work anyway. But I fill out a form and then they just transfer the money into one of my accounts. But it's not a cash in hand thing.
No.
It's all done.
Yeah. So there's benefits to and from. I'm also informed that was it Frank that assisted with the canally. His first question he asked to us is, what is my contribution I have to make toward the food? So apparently industry, people who work on the industry provide a contribution, volunteers provide a contribution back to the organisation for the food that they're being provided with. We don't have that expectation here either. We feed our people as part of their duty. So just put that on the table. Yeah,
So swings and balances.
yeah, but you know, the biggest cost in any household, one of the biggest costs these days is fuel, particularly if you're travelling. And there's been a lot of people say to me, well, I'd do more if, you know, if I had a bit of reimbursement for when I was actually crewing on the boat or something. I'll still come on Tuesdays, but then I've got to turn up again on the weekend for a working bee, and the next weekend to crew on the boat. I'm coming 3 or 4 times a fortnight. It does make it hard for some people. It's not for everyone, but clearly if we make a rule, it's got to be applied to everyone.
I think it needs to be as equitable to as many people as possible. So I think a single figure value is maybe too simple a number.
Yeah.
I think obviously the more complex we get, the harder it is as well. So I appreciate that. I did a simple experiment today just to have some numbers in my head for this conversation. For me to drive from the Adelaide Hills to here, so not even from Adelaide, a bit closer already, is 150 kilometres each way, so 300 total. So if you're looking at hard fuel costs for my vehicle at 10 litres to the 100, say it's $55. So there is a significant expense for some crew members to travel, especially from Auburn, if they're coming from Adelaide.
And that's where we pitched the scale thing.
Yeah.
So the 300 kilometres, most modern vehicles will get less than 10, but we always work on 10, like old school. you know, that's where that scout model really was.
That's, you're looking at one way distance to actually like 300 kilometres from their hometown to where they're
Yeah,
volunteering. Yeah. Which, I mean, I think it's a volunteer you're prepared to, you know, commit some of your own financial resources as well.
most volunteers are,
Mm.
it's just, yeah.
Definitely understand the argument, agree with specialised roles like captains, engineers and mates, you know, that's the only way to keep them. I'm looking at the terms of reference and that's part of our role is to support the retention of those sorts of volunteers, but also to ensure the ongoing sustainability. Or, you know, there's a throwaway line that Oscar and industry operate that way. Do they need ratepayers funds? I think if this goes, a recommendation goes to council, council need to know that because we've got people unable to pay their insurance, to insure their property because of council rates or whatever. So we do have a responsibility to make sure that we are spending ratepayers funds efficiently. But like I said, I'm not against it because if you're making a profit from it, so we just need to make sure that we are profiting and we aren't costing the general public, I guess. But I think all of that's going to be gone through in our sustainability report too. My question is budget. Look, I can't see council adding extra budget. So what can we miss out on to get this, or where can we get extra sponsorship from? To, you know, how are we going to pay this? Do we know how much it's going to cost? If it's, to throw that up and say, yeah, good. What happens when we don't have the money for it? So I think there needs to be a little bit more discussion on that. I've done a little bit of work in another committee I'm in, where the volunteers did also want funding, and we found something on the ATO about a volunteer policy where it was 25 cents a kilometre. So they're basically saying, well, that's what actually petrol costs rather than the 85 cents car maintenance and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, whether you look at a policy like that, but I think you need to really specify what positions you're going to do, otherwise how many crew are on each boat, and does that mean Andy or whoever's staffing those boats need to go, oh, I need to make sure that 10% are only from outside there and the rest, you know, because you need to think about that because you still have to make that budget be sustainable.
Where we're at the moment though, it's the senior positions, we're not having the difficulty getting them on boats. It's the hospitality, it's the crew members, it's the deckhands, the tent boats, right, I think. So it's hard just to say the captain, mate, and the engineer will get it. We're okay for them at the moment. That's a dilemma, but we may not be next year.
Also, I think about it quite a bit in terms of there'll be a point where we probably have to, probably a paid chef, but is not wanting to create tiers of hierarchy amongst the volunteers, if that makes sense. It should be noted that we run a residential boat, the other councils don't. So Denise and Guy are there a day before making beds, making cabins, doing flower arrangements, and to wake the boat up and put it to sleep in a hospitality sense is quite the work.
And that can be added to the cost of the passenger tour and then charged on to the passenger.
Yes,
Not the rate
That's one of the questions through the chair, is you pose where does the potential revenue come from? You to pay. So, you know, if that was put into a report that, and look, I support the concept because without volunteers, you can't run the services, and then there's a cost obviously to the community and they're driving visitation and tourism. And so, you know, we shouldn't get to a position where people want to do it, but they just can't afford to do it. And, you know, no volunteers go above and beyond. It's never going to be a total recoupment of what they put in. So, you know, you add an extra $5 to the ticket price, to go into a $5,000 or whatever budget, and then you implement it.
So we talked one time about a levy, volunteer levy on holiday. I just think if this is going to come to council, then you need to post the income and the expense. So you want to do it properly so that it gets up.
And I'm sure that people that are going on the boat, if you market it that way, you know, say your ticket is $50 plus $5 volunteer levy to support our volunteers, then people would probably happily contribute to that rather than that. So I think it's got merit, it's just exactly what it looks like. and then,
I worry it's not quite ready to go up. because
agreed.
If it goes to council with this,
Mm.
I'm not sure you're gonna get a really.
Yeah, and I don't think you can actually choose that it would be your higher end that would get.
Yeah, yeah, and I
Yeah, because-
understand all of that.
Yeah.
But if you can say, this is how we're gonna pay for it, then it doesn't
Yeah.
even matter.
And look, I think that's the next level of information in a report.
But if we could go to council, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the next report, isn't it? So the recommendation for this, then council requires
Yeah.
a lot more information, which we realised would be the case. And we'll be breaking down, try and look at what it may have cost us over the last 6 months by the crew members we've had, and provide that evidence. But as a normal part, any costs associated with the boat included in the budget gets costed out, and the ticket cost or the fees and charges is worked out on that basis. So more we include in our budget, it results in increased prices for the passengers.
I believe these committees should get that detail too, because part of our terms of reference is that we need to make sure the boat stays
The other
sustainable.
thing that we need to be still considering is all our volunteers are trained, so it costs to train those people, so that should be taken into what we're looking at as well.
It does. Yeah.
That's training they're getting, they're not paying for,
Yeah.
which they don't, not necessarily taken into account when people discuss this.
So maybe through the chair, something that you consider is further information comes back to the committee to consider, and, you know, with more detail around all those things.
What would the time be in terms of, do we have another meeting of this committee before, and give us enough time to get it to council to get it into the next financial year?
So we're working, good question, I don't know what the time of the next committee meeting is.
26th of April, I believe.
Yeah, so that would work fitting into through the budget process.
Yeah.
So we've started the budget process at the moment, and we'll work those out up until, you know, June, finalising July. But again, I don't make decisions on the budget, but I would support Andy putting a budget line if it's well researched, we know what it looks like. If the income is coming, from ticket sales or a contribution from the people using the boats. That, it's not a net, just my point, cost to ratepayers.
Yeah, I think if I can add to that, because Katrina's going out picking fast with the, we need volunteers emails.
Yeah.
Partly that's because on Saturday, to our cruises, first one, I think, I know, 3 grand, 3,000, was that right? That's some rough sums, I think we're about 3,000 for the day, which wasn't too bad for the first one on show weekend. That, I think, as a benchmark, that needs to reach the equivalent of a day hire, like what are we doing, 4,500 per day charter?
4 plus GST.
Yeah, so, if we're hitting that 4,000 mark, I think this, Andy had a say, but this has got what goes in the report, and then we look at, but it's actually finding the people that we put 600 through the bar. And you're making that up. With more amount than I expected, so.
Keep choking the little mate out, keep choking, we're doing amazing.
Well, that's the other thing, you know, day hire, so you could include a levy, so that the person hiring it notices that they have to pay. some
Yeah, I think-
towards cost.
I think the day, personally, I think the day hire levy is not part of this argument at all. This is forms part of our budgeting for cruises and ticket prices, absolutely.
But day
But
hire.
every-
is as well.
Yeah, they like
But that's
including.
covered.
Yeah, it does, yeah. $4,000 for a day is, like, that's good money.
But we're charging that before we pay volunteers fuel, so if we then have to pay.
Oh, yeah,
on
no,
top,
that would
yeah.
increase, yes, yeah.
I
that's right.
think it's a real consideration we need to look at.
So I'm hearing, everybody's in favour of the ideas of the concept. Is there a feeling on, a tiered reimbursement as opposed to a flat reimbursement?
Yeah, item 4. Here,
Tiered?
Some sort of tiered or progressive.
And
Or do we need to defer this to the next meeting so we can get that information in the report? So that it goes
I
to
think it's,
council as
we're
well.
not,
Yeah.
because we're not putting together a recommendation to
Yeah,
council
Yes,
here.
So it would be a deferment or around the table, a deferment and the chair. How it's sort of worded to get that information.
Or
so
we
that
can
it's-
just report we received.
Okay.
Do the first point, we receive
I'll
the
just-
report.
I'll send another report next
Okay.
month.
Yeah.
And that then can be feedback to the mobs that
Yeah.
is supportive,
Yeah,
looking at the detail and.
yeah,
And are they were happy that it happened, if it is to go ahead, goes ahead in the 25-26 financial year.
Yeah, they haven't objected too much to that. They wanted to put forward
Yeah.
for
So
consideration.
if that,
Their main.
if the, can be informed that the committee, accept in principle and, upon discussion, they've decided it needs to be fleshed out further before, and a good argument maybe it goes to council. But we'll still make a 1st of July 2026 deadline if council.
It should probably be a discussion with the Canadian operations group as well.
yeah.
So I'm happy to move that the report be received and a further report comes to the April meeting. With all, financial details for us to make a decision.
And I'll have to second that.
And I'll use the scaled approach as the basis for.
Yeah.
for-
Thank you. Right.
Sorry, can I just get who moved and seconded?
Yes.
Yeah.
All in favour?
It was on the
The other, just as an aside, comment I thought about with my volunteer hat on is that, and it's probably further down the track the way it's launched, the volunteers actually can have the option to not take it up. But then to know that that goes back into the fund, that makes sense. So then another, I know we have difficulties with rolling funds over, but then another volunteer can take it up, it doesn't sort of go back into a general revenue pot.
or if they're on training or something else.
Yeah, I've just noticed with the volunteers thing, really annoys me is the donation kits everywhere, which I really hate, just personally. And which is countered by the fact that passengers really like or are amazed that nobody is paid on boat. And I just say, oh, thanks for being told crazy to do that. Thanks for joining us. But then, and it's probably because there's the friends of a volunteer group there's not a capacity for it to be a separate entity to the council. If that makes sense. There's work on it. But which is, you know, 3 votes. Yes. Well, I mean, we're starting to see some of that being played out in Alexandria Council at the moment.
We're watching with interest.
Yes. So, that, because those volunteers are going, actually, you know, that's nice, but I don't really need that. But I know somebody else who is in a different financial position and moves further away will require. Because I think going to council, you're going to have to say, it's capped at this much. The budget line is capped at this much per year. So, okay, thank you. 7.10 Canally mooring. Andy.
So, this is a recommendation from the Canally Operations Group. And there was a lot of discussion about the mooring for PS Canal, the group, which we're worked through with the committee about to undertake a master plan, township master plan, Morgan, as well as all the other townships. And that the correct way to go about this is clearly the development of a new mooring facility will require grant funding, it can't be funded by the ratepayers, is to have the facility or the basis for the facility on council's master plan shown, the report, ready to rock and roll. We've already got some engineering works in the pipeline. We can get a first grant to do the engineering and design, bring all of that together and the costing for a second grant to pay for it. But for me and with the committee's support, that the best way to start is to have it put onto or within the master plan for more. So that's as simple as this report really gets. It's not asking council for more money. It is asking for support in the master plan. We as a council can apply for future grants and use the master plan as a display to say we support this.
Sheree, have you got any
No.
bills from a more point of view?
No, I reckon it's good, positive.
One question in, how that, if it does at all, crosses over for a princess mooring or, third party. I'm not understanding canal, somewhere for the canal to live, but how it might across passenger boarding, both for our boats or for other boats.
Right.
And look, that when it comes time to me and Gary sitting down talking what the inclusion, we'll clearly have to consider the princess as well.
Yeah.
We can't share a facility because it would cost far too much, but a simple boarding deck for the princess as part of that township master plan will probably be a more simple, palatable, cost-effective way.
Be good if we had a wharf.
Just
improvement.
It's all.
No, actually, the community have their say in the master plan, and it's really engaging with the community.
It's a 3-level wharf. It's the only 3-level wharf in Australia.
Timing on the master plan.
Oh,
That's being worked through at the moment, so the strategy's been worked through and then the master plans have come out of that.
I don't think we've got the document yet.
No.
So we don't know.
And then what's the process of that then goes to council? And then.
Yeah, so the strategy will be endorsed by council and then the master planning process will come out of that. And then there'll be consultation for each of the townships.
Yeah.
To inform what that looks like.
I would think it'd be similar to our growth, where we've gone out to its community, we've had a workshop, and it's come back to council, council had a look, and gone back and got a draft built, yeah. Lots of community comes back, yeah. Big community come out and talk about it. Engage with us, yeah.
In that case, 7.1, would somebody like to move that we receive the report? I think the second time, very. Excellent. Item 8, questions without notice.
well, these are basically any further questions to do with anything within the agenda.
Oh, within the agenda.
The agenda.
All the strategic nature of that as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just general comment, because
So on that last matter regarding canal mooring,
Yeah.
which is obviously a very long-term vision, it's going to be years in the process. What's the facilities that are there now for Canali, is that deemed appropriate for the short term, next 1 to 2 to 3 years?
From what I've seen today, short term, safe enough. Longer term, we need to consider disability access, addition of the areas, the paths. The master plan might put a mooring in a different spot to where it is now. That's why we need to go through that process. Yeah, there's a lot to consider, but yes, that's essentially where we're at.
So is the Canali model considering requirements, sort of starting 1 July for the next 2 years, what they might need to be able to get, paying customers on board and that sort of thing?
The group is developing quite quickly. We haven't quite got to that level yet. I think that'd be fair, Di and Teresa. We're more working on what do we need to do to get the vessel surveyed and crew on standby and trained ready to go. The facility is adequate enough for now. We can use a bus to take passengers down there to remove any issues with disability access. the ramp itself, the gangway is very secure and long enough. So, yeah, I think as we develop, or as that group develops, those sort of things will come into conversation.
And on the final recommissioning, so the 1st of July is the anticipated, well, Mornington River, so it's actually June. And so that final sort of 10% of engineering works and things, which I know you're still discussing, is looking to be well in hand and can be completed by that.
I can't commit to any of that until we have the priority list and the costs and we go through a process of how we fund it. It could defer the surveying of the vessel and therefore the commissioning, but the date, we have to have a date. Everybody wants it to be part of the Morgan Living River Festival, regardless. So we've got a date to work to do our best to get there.
But to my understanding, like, you can get commissioned, it doesn't mean it then is operationally taking passengers.
Yeah, yes, right.
So I think the Morgan River Festival is the aim, which to relaunch the boat, and then depends on a number of different factors of when it starts cruising with paint.
So at the very least, it could be out on the water operating, but might not be able to take passengers.
Could it be dog that people walk on it and have a look?
We need to check that when we got
Yeah,
the
probably
That's,
so.
that's the objective. Minimum that it would be a tour, and it gets launched, but then taking people.
But we do have to be a bit careful with our AMSA permit. We've got an exemption to operate for 3 months. That expires just before Morgan Living River Festival. So we have to take that into consideration. Yeah, but
So the boats from upriver can't get down.
Can that have some permit? Yeah, a small extension or?
no, they've told me they won't extend the 3 month permit any further, but we might be able to get a short transit permit for the purpose of. So that's the way we work.
Which is what's happened in recent times.
Yeah. If we were very, very close to survey, I'll have a really good argument to say, I just need another month, guys, please come on. Be good, be nice. Please. But we did really well to get 3 months. They were really hesitant to even go 3 months initially. So it's because of our really good record. It's because we were able to provide documentations, safety management system, risk management plans. We've got all of that for AMSA, and they're satisfied that we know as an organisation reasonably well what we're doing. That's what they gave it to us.
Any other questions without notice? Or they're not ready to stay agenda, so I'll keep them for another time.
Workshop discussion.
If that's the case, the next meeting in Manor on Thursday, the 24th of April.
I'll be an apology for that. It's a long weekend.
We may have a quorum problem because I will certainly be apology as will Warren because we're both going to be on the Marion to go.
To be confirmed, then maybe.
Yeah, it's a short week as well. It's just after Easter.
Because we will be going downstream, I think, or upstream. We're going somewhere. So perhaps, Andy can confirm that if we don't have a quorum.
We'll do that after the Wooden Boat Festival.
Yeah.
We should have
And
Tough week, that's going to be 3 day week.
Yeah, I love those 3 day weeks.
thank you, folks. Thank you.
It's 12 o'clock on the dot.
And I promise I'll be here next time.
Well, if you don't, you're getting more jobs.
So, close the meeting.